Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We know that your time is valuable, especially with the current state of things, so we appreciate everyone choosing to spend that time with us. And above all else, hope everyone is staying safe right now. My name is Andrew Whipp, and I'm the lead creative and editor at Green Buzz Agency. I'm also joined by my friend and colleague, Todd Plotkin, the founder and CEO of Green Buzz Agency. Todd, how goes it?
It goes very well, very well. I'm very much looking forward to Brandon's presentation today.
Ditto, ditto. And today's webinar is the fourth in our Green Buzz Agency webinar series, which was created to connect our community with industry experts who can help us break down top-line strategy, best practices, and advice during these tough times. So today we'll be covering content creation that powers growth and digital transformation during COVID-19. So if you're looking to break out of the box, bring some new ideas back to your teams, then you are in the right place. To walk us through all of this and much, much more is the multi-talented thought leader and PBS Digital Studio head, Brandon Arolfo. Brandon is a Grammy-nominated Webby and Telly-winning creative leader with deep experience developing and producing content that entertains, informs, and grows massive audiences. As the head of PBS Digital Studios, Brandon is at the helm of the team responsible for over 2 billion lifetime views and original programming across streaming, YouTube, Facebook, IGTV, podcasts, and even Oculus. So thanks, Brandon, for sharing your time, wisdom, and experiences with us today. We are really excited to kick this off with you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Todd.
And last but not least, we have a number of webinars coming up, so keep an eye out for those. Next week, I believe we have Carter Hansen, the VP of Content and Programming at VidCon, as well as Gregory Litley, who's the VP of Social Strategy and Content at Elite Model World. And they'll be talking about virtual events and viral activations on trending platforms like TikTok, so don't miss that. It's going to be a super informative webinar with tons of hands-on takeaways, so we hope to see everybody there. So with all that out of the way, let's jump right into the good stuff. Brandon, would you mind kicking us off?
No, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Todd, for the invitation again. So today I'm going to speak a bit about PBS, I think the original programming that we developed and the types of audiences that we've grown across multiple platforms. Along the way, I'm going to discuss sort of these 4 topics: how to identify an audience, organic growth through online communities, keeping viewers engaged, and how we've served audiences during COVID-19. I think that in a way, a lot of what we are doing now, a lot of the ways that we've been able to change from a digital perspective, PBS, to doing COVID-19 programming is really because of the way that we were sort of operating before. You know, we've got crews all over the country doing content. We've got multiple producers everywhere, and we're already set up in a remote fashion. Like, I mean, I'm in DC, obviously, but then I've got producers all the way on the West Coast. Sometimes we've got producers shooting in other countries. So as far as an institution like PBS is concerned, we kind of had a good foundation for how to be nimble and adapt our content. So just for context, these first few slides, I'm going to talk a bit about PBS and our different priorities and our different audiences. This is just to give some context, and then I'll go into a few best practices around audience development and, like I was saying before, how to keep people engaged and that sort of thing. So for context, just about PBS digital programming, you know, we, along with our member station partners, can continue to increase the reach and relevance of public broadcasting by developing original digital programming and engaging new communities across multiple platforms. You know, it's sort of our mission. We see it as sort of our duty to ensure that PBS and member stations reach new and diverse and expanding audiences online that broadcast can't always do. These are, you know, everyone knows there's a lot of video platforms out there. And look, if PBS thinks that there's potential for audience growth on a particular platform, if we feel as though we're going to be able to, you know, utilize our core values and sort of springboard off of what, you know, PBS holds as far as our mission is concerned on these different platforms, then we'll give it a go and we'll try, you know, and we'll see what we can do as far as audience growth is concerned across different platforms. But as far as everyone knows, you know, it's a constantly evolving space, and it can be really, really hard to grow audiences on a platform. And then before you know it, you start to grow an audience there, and that platform is no longer in vogue. That platform, is no longer getting investment. The platform is become a different thing. And for an institution like PBS, who, sometimes does react a bit slower, who does sometimes, it takes a bit longer to fit all the pieces together in order to start producing content. By the time you've gone through all of that, the platform may no longer be around. Like Facebook Watch, for instance, we got on the bandwagon a couple of years ago whenever Facebook Watch launched, thinking that, great, we'll get in early, we'll try and control our destiny. So far, we've got good engagement across our Facebook Watch pages. We're definitely growing audiences there. We have a windowing strategy to Facebook from some of our more popular YouTube shows, but it still changes all the time. And tomorrow, before you know it, it could go away. So there's always that sort of, sort of risk that you take when it comes to developing audiences across different platforms, and new platforms especially. So I think the mainstay for us, obviously, has been YouTube. It's always been there for PBS ever since Digital Studios, or PBS, I should say, started to produce digital content. 2012, 2013. YouTube was one of the first platforms, and it's always been a constant. Like I said before, we tried other platforms, and we are still on other platforms, but YouTube has always been the behemoth, right? And just for context, I'm sure a lot of people on this call or on this webinar know this, but there are 500 hours every minute of content uploaded to YouTube. That's 720,000 hours a day. And 90% of internet users 18 to 34 across YouTube, this qualifies them as active users. And for this age group, it's the most used social YouTube network according to certain sources. And obviously, when there's 720,000 hours of video content uploaded every day, it's really hard to kind of cut through the noise. So you've got to make sure that you are doing what's right for your organization as far as your priorities, but you've also got to do what's right by the platform that is your primary platform. So if YouTube is your primary platform, then you've got to do what's good for you, balancing out what is going to be good for YouTube and how to sort of gain the algorithm and make sure that you are utilizing all the products that YouTube has to offer, or that platform has to offer, in order to not only create really good content, but also to get that platform to recognize your content and be willing to take a chance to surface that content to other subscribers or to other users. So when it comes to all the different platforms, I would say here are our most popular platforms as of now. Like I said before, each platform has different audience potential, and each has its own set of optimization techniques to ensure audience growth. If you're an organization that prefers to window content on multiple platforms, this can make that a challenge, because really, in a way, if you have a strategy, okay, great, well, I'm gonna produce this web series or this digital series is going to cost a lot of money. I'm going to want to make sure that I'm using all parts of the buffalo. Sorry, I'm from Texas, I'll use that term. But also to be able to maximize this content other places, you just got to be prepared that it may not always translate from YouTube to Facebook Watch to your own maybe owned and operated platforms like we have PBS.org, PBS OTT, Apple TV, and Roku TV. So you just got to make sure that you're prepared to sort of select that primary platform and how to optimize that piece of content or that series or whatever it is for that platform, and then have in mind also your secondary and tertiary platforms where that video might go. So it might be good to build in with your production partners. We typically build in with our producers, our member station partners, and people who create content with us. We'll consider multiple versions. A version that's for our primary platform, which is YouTube, which bows down to the YouTube algorithm that drinks a YouTube Kool-Aid and really allows us to have a successful piece of content on that platform. And then we may create another version that is windowable, if I can use that, to other platforms like Facebook Watch or somewhere else. But right now, we've got across YouTube, we've got a network of 21 active YouTube channels. We've got 7 Facebook Watch pages. We have 2 apps in Oculus, which is 360 VR. And then we're also creating content, original content for, like I said, PBS OTT, like Apple TV and Roku, and what we refer to as sort of our SVOD play, which is Passport. I shouldn't say SVOD because it's not necessarily a subscription-based service, but there definitely is a membership. It's a membership perk. When you become a member, you get access to Passport. So these are the 4 primary platforms that we're producing content for, but there are other platforms in our universe that we're also creating content for, but these are the 4 primary ones. When it comes to, let's say, different formats and different types of content, digital content that PBS does, and look, this is just the way that we refer to it. It's a way to keep it clean internally. If you're, from a funding perspective, from a underwriting perspective, and just from a format perspective. So on one side, we've got our ongoing programming, which is sort of what I was referring to when I was talking about our active PBS YouTube channels. So these channels, they've been around for multiple seasons. Some of them produce between 20 and 45 episodes a year. We're continuously adjusting for audience data and feedback. This is really original content that's optimized for those platforms. So most of it, like I said, is YouTube based. Some of it though is straight up made for Facebook Watch, and some of it's made for other platforms, but it's platform specific content, and it serves large audiences by engaging really niche communities within these overall audiences. Typically, a lot of this content is host driven, and I'll talk about this more later on. Not all of it, but typically it's host driven. We find that in this space, it is in a way building a series around a subject matter expert. It gives us PBS. It allows us to be more bona fide because a lot of our experts are subject matter experts in their field and in what this series is created around. So some of our hosts have got PhDs. Some of them are musicians if they're on a musician show or whatever it might be. And we also find that marketing and promotions is easier when you've got a host involved, because they're able to, typically they're digital natives and they're of social media, and they know how to promote their show across other platforms, as well as engage with other hosts or other shows that may not be within our network itself. And then the other bucket of content that we have is what we refer to, for lack of a better way to say it, and I wish that I could hire like an agency to help us figure out all these terms, but like we refer to our other bucket of content as multi-platform. And these are more like limited run series or mini series that typically connect to larger PBS events. So for instance, I think there's a thumbnail there from our digital mini series called Stellar. This is a 6-part mini series that was inspired by PBS's Summer of Space that happened a couple of summers ago, or maybe it was last summer. There were several There were several massive broadcast shows that had to do with space, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing or whatever it was. So because we wanted to extend that, for lack of a better way to say it, campaign of Summer of Space to other platforms, to other PBS platforms, we created this mini series, asked 3 of our YouTube hosts to be a part of this 6-part mini series. We set them off on a cosmic road trip around the country to visit some of the most important space research facilities that America has. And this is a mini series. Yeah, sure, it used these other YouTube hosts from their own shows, but it was a mini series onto itself. And we try and do that as much as possible. And these mini series are distributed multiple ways. So we may tailor a couple of the episodes to fit that particular host's channel in their series, but then also that miniseries itself might be windowed onto other PBS owned and operated platforms. It may be on a Facebook Watch page. It kind of depends on the KPIs and the goal of that content. The content is also used. And the last thing I'll say about this, we also use this content for like CTA integration, like calls to action. So for instance, a mini series that we did called It's Lit was tied to this massive event that PBS had a couple of years ago called the Great American Read, which is basically asking Americans to vote on their favorite book. It was a larger campaign that over almost a year's time, it asked Americans to vote on their favorite book. So this show, this It's Lit show, was episodes onto itself. It was a series onto itself, but it also was encouraging its fans and its viewers to go vote on their favorite book. So you're able to not only create a great show, for a great miniseries inspired by larger PBS events, but you're also able to weave in marketing capability to create awareness about broadcast shows, and you're also able to integrate things like CTAs into the episodes. And for us, obviously the value is creating good content and engaging audiences across different platforms, but also to add value to PBS and to, for funding purposes as well. We will use this as marketing potential as well. So across our original content, across our multi-platform content, as well as our ongoing series, right now we have across YouTube and Facebook, we've got 26 million plus subscribers, and we're averaging around 53 million views a month between all of our content. And I think that one of the important things, and that's all great, neato. You've got a good audience, and you've got a great amount of views. Super great. I think that the thing that YouTube especially likes from our content is the retention rate. Plus it proves to us that, okay, great. Hey, yeah, we're doing a good job. People are actually watching the majority of the content that we put up there. When I say that, not just per video, but they're also watching the majority of the content all the way through, let's say. So we have a 55 to 64% retention rate on YouTube, and this varies depending on the channel, depending on the series, but this is a really good thing, compared to other PBS content on other platforms and compared to other content in the YouTube universe. This is a good, healthy retention rate that, we've been told proves to YouTube, obviously we're keeping people in platform, and when YouTube sees that sort of thing, they're more likely to help you out when it comes to maybe pushing people to your next video, even though you've got a bit of control over that. But also when surfacing your videos to people who may not be subscribing to your channel, they're more likely to do that if the retention rate is higher. So this is just for more context. So this is just some of our popular ongoing series that we have renewed for 2020 and beyond 2020 a bit. You'll see that some are member station partnerships. So some of the digital programming that PBS develops and produces is produced in partnership with member stations, but also we've got what we refer to, and again, I hate to say this, what we refer to as national producer partnerships. So these are series, this is content that isn't necessarily produced by a PBS entity or member station. These are production companies and producers or hosts or whatever it might be around the country. And we've got some incredible producers and production companies that some of them have been with PBS digital programming since the beginning. So we got really, really lucky there. So getting more into the best practices part of the conversation, I think that, so I'm going to talk a bit about researching vibrant communities, making a community plan, and how to get your audiences involved in the next few slides. But I want to say that, and I kind of touched on this earlier, that, okay, great. Look, especially those of us who have been in the business for a while now, creating content like, be it traditional content or be it, nonfiction TV programming or YouTube videos or whatever it is. I think a lot of people who are successful and who've been around long enough, they understand how to make good video, and they understand how to make a good video series, be it the combination of a great host or a great narrative or storytelling or whatever it might be. But when you're dealing with digital platforms, it isn't enough just to do a really, really great video series. It's a lot of it, but it isn't enough. When you're going into the development of a new digital series, obviously you've got to know the platform you want to be on, and obviously you've got to know the different tools that you can utilize to make your show really good, all that kind of stuff. But it's really important that you're using everything on that platform to make your show and to make your series the most successful it can be. And that's everything from recognizing the different products you can use. It recognizes that you can't just put a video up there, but you've got to have the engagement. You've got to have people commenting on it. You've got to have people sharing it. You've got to have the retention rate has to be up. If you're on Facebook, it's got to be thumb stopping. If it's on YouTube, it's got to be et cetera, et cetera. So there's all this stuff that goes into it. But there's also having the conversation with your audience and with your community. And the more that you show the platform that you are having a conversation and that you're using the tools, again, the more likely that platform is going to be to support you better, to surface you to people that it might not be surfacing, or just to give you some more love from a marketing perspective. So identify your audience and research vibrant communities. So what this means is, this is basic stuff, right? So when we begin to develop a new show, we might know broadly that there's a need for a show about math, or that we think that a show about art pop will be popular, or that we think that a new physics show is going to be popular. It's really good though if you are, and everyone sort of knows this, but digital is massive and there are massive communities, and it's not enough just to say, okay, we're going to make a show about space, or we're going to make a show about, I don't know, math. Like I said before, you've got to really drill in deep, especially in the beginning, of who that audience is that you're going to be serving, so that when you launch your show, there's organic growth at first. There's an audience that show attaches to, that people recognize themselves in this show. So by starting off, while you're developing the concept for this show, while you're developing, what the show's going to look like, even which platform is going to be your primary platform of distribution, it's really good to start asking questions about the audience, to really sort of get an audience first perspective. And that's basic stuff. So that's age, location, gender, education. That's all pretty easy. But then moving to the next level, it's where do these people congregate? So if I have show X, where might this audience about physics, diving deeper into physics, about black holes, diving deeper into black holes? Is this show about gravity? Or episodes going to be about gravity, physics gravity, or some episodes are going to be about the gravitational pull of love? What makes this show different, and who is the audience there that's going to watch a show? And then where does this audience currently sort of congregate? Even if you're making it up in a way, you're still sort of figuring out, oh, okay, well, these group likes this group is talking about this across this blog or across this publication or whatever it might be. So you're getting a sense of where they congregate and where they speak to each other. And then what are these people interested in? And this part's really good from a competitive analysis sense. So while you're doing this sort of exercise, you're also looking at other shows that these people might be interested in. So common hobbies, like what other television programming are they watching? What are they watching on IGTV? What are they watching on YouTube? And how is our show going to be different than what they're already talking about and what they're already listening to? And how is it going to capitalize on their hobbies? And how is it going to capitalize on closely related content that they're watching? So during the development process and before launch, what we'll typically do is, and this is just what we typically do to keep everyone on the same page, we will create an audience targeting statement. And that is, that's for everyone from internal partnerships, for people like, corp comms, to promotions, to social media, to people who are on my team, like the programming people, to the ops people, to the producers, to the hosts, to everybody. We create an audience statement for internal purposes to really keep everybody on the same page. And then all of this work that you're doing ahead of time, be it the audience targeting or be it stuff like this, you can reuse this later on when it comes to descriptions for episodes, when it comes to show descriptions, when it comes to your press release. So as you're doing this, it's not like all of your work is just going to evaporate. All of this is going to be used not just during the development of the show, but also during production and then publishing. So just real quick, this was a show that we launched a couple of years ago called Monstrum. It seriously, y'all, it's like one of my favorite shows. I can't say my favorite, but one of my favorite shows that PBS Digital does. It's unique from a competitive analysis. There wasn't much else out there like this, but we did a survey. Just speaking of data, qualitative data, we did a survey a few years ago, and one of the questions that we asked was, well, what kind of show would you want PBS to produce next? And in a weird way, we got thoughts about monsters. So we were like, well, how the hell do we make a show about monsters? So we kept thinking about it, kept doing competitive analysis, kept seeing who the audience might be for this show. Then we reached out to a producer. We ended up finding an amazing host called Dr. Emily Zarka, who is a subject matter expert in the field of folklore and monsters because she got her PhD in, oh God, I'm going to butcher this, but Victorian literature and folklore, I believe. So she's like the perfect host for this show. So the audience statement for this show is, this is a show for comic book geeks, horror buffs, and fans of Netflix lore, monster movies, and Stephen King. They love the mythology unit in elementary school. They may feel a special connection to Wednesday Addams and Tim Burton and other ghoulish icons. They probably wear more black than most. There's a lot. It's funny, sure, great, but there's a lot in there that allows us to sort of keep going in the right direction when it comes to this show and launching this show. So make a community plan. Okay, similar to what I was saying before, it's important, where else do the audiences congregate? Where else do the viewers like have a conversation? And if you start to monitor these different, let's say, conversations in these different areas, and you can actually sort of find out, are they talking about you? Are they talking about your show, which does happen? And if you've done your research ahead of time properly during your community plan sort of strategy, you're really able to branch out from the kind of videos and content that you may have slated to be up first, and to be able to start branching out into other subject matter. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I've seen that episodes have come to mind because we're following our audiences across another social media platform. For instance, we have a great show that just hit 2 million views this morning, I think. Not 2 million views, 2 million subs. It's called PBS Space Time. And a couple of years ago, we were following a few subreddits that we knew that our audience congregated on. They were having a conversation about LIGO. And I don't know if many people on the webinar know about LIGO, but gravitational stuff, I'm not going to go into because I'm not a subject matter expert, and that's not the point. The point is that we heard people talking about LIGO. We knew that there was a ravenous group on a subreddit that was discussing LIGO. So we didn't know when LIGO was all going to go down. So we went ahead and we banked an episode and stored it away for when the LIGO happened and Einstein's theory came true. Then we were going to publish that episode. So what we did was, when it did happen, we were able to put a sneak preview of this episode into this subreddit, and people went nuts over it because they knew we were listening to them. Some of them were already fans of the show, but it converted. I don't have the exact measurements, but it was able to convert several people over to Space Time, and the share rate on that episode was nuts because, okay, yeah, great, sure, it was a good episode, but it was timely, but also because we did our time, instead of spending money on paid socials and paid media, which doesn't really always work, we found out a way to do it organically through having a community plan, knowing where people are congregating, and knowing how to speak to them in different ways. Now, that all said, there's a lot of different other platforms out there that you could be following across your community plan. But you can't spread yourself too thin because, well, I know this because I work at PBS and we're resource strapped, but no one has the resources to follow everything. So it's about picking one or two other platforms other than your primary platform, and following those platforms. And don't spread yourself too thin because what's the point? Keep audience engaged and activated. I think along the lines of what I was saying before, it's listening to your viewers. It's figuring out ways to listen to your viewers, be it in platform, in your comments, or in community tab on YouTube, or across other platforms as well. I would not, let's say that you have gotten a budget from a network, or let's say that you're doing an ongoing show or whatever, depending on how many episodes you have, if the order is big enough, there's danger in shooting all episodes at one time. And if a network or somebody says, well, we need to have all of these different shows planned out now and episodes planned out now, that's great and all, but there has to be room for adaptation. There has to be room to adapt your content depending on what your first episodes or your first set of content is telling you. If you go ahead and shoot out all 40 episodes in a couple of months, then you're kind of screwed because it may not be relevant. You may not be hitting on, you are doing what you assume is going to work on that platform instead of releasing something, listening, iterating, and then adapting, and then putting out more content later on. So there's a way, from workflow perspective, from economies of scale, to spread out that content production and development, and that's great. I'm not saying you shouldn't have an idea of what you're going to do, but you really need to sort of you respond in a way to audience behavior and what people are talking about in almost in real time, kind of. Collaborate with other influencers and series channels, that's great. So if you've got like-minded friends, if you've got like-minded hosts, there's nothing wrong with collaborating with them. Do an episode on their channel, they'll do an episode on your channel. It'll be great. It shows that you're engaging with audiences, you're trying to give them what they want on somebody else's channel, even, as long as you're sort of adhering to your own personality and your own authenticity. And then, of course, incorporate audience feedback and questions into your content as much as possible. And that's not just within the video content, but that's when it comes to comments and everything else. So just a really, really quick clip that's on the next slide, but let me set it up. Like I was saying before, we develop content, like It's Okay to Be Smart, for instance. It's one of our older shows. It's got 3 million subs. Dr. Joe Hansen's amazing. I love him. I would go on vacation with him. We'd have a good time. This show really responds to audience feedback and data. And in a clip I'm going to show, Dr. Hansen tells viewers that he's making an episode because of their response to a previous episode. I'll run it and then I'll go on to the next slide.
Hey smart people, so a few weeks ago we made a video about the pyramids and how, while they are pretty heckin' impressive, we can trace the evolution of their construction and see the ancient Egyptians using trial and error, even making a few mistakes, which basically tells us they didn't need aliens to build them, they just needed science. You guys really liked that video, but a few of you were a little bothered that despite the fact it was called Who Built the Pyramids, I didn't talk about how the pyramids were made. So, let's talk about it.
Great, thank you. And just a little bit more on keeping audience engaged and activated. Like I said before, creating videos based on viewer suggestions is great, like Dr. Hansen did in a way. Feature your viewers on the show. It's always a great way to do it. Even if that person, even if the people who are recognizing that, it's not them, it's still great that, oh, maybe next time I'll get recognized. Shout out to individual viewers on your videos, same thing. And then ask viewers as much as possible to participate. Now, all of this changes over time. So there's different ways of doing this, but this is just sort of a baseline of how to do it. You can use different products available in Facebook or on YouTube or wherever the platform is to do this sort of thing. But it's always a good sort of baseline. So just another clip. So I think that one of the things, and this might change over time, but it's definitely there now. You know, I've seen some obviously amazing content, digital content that makes me cry, that makes me laugh, that makes me, get angry. And, it's the same, it's definitely the same. It definitely can be likened to the same sort of subject matter that is on PBS broadcasts, that's on other streaming networks or whatever it is. But it's no matter what the subject matter is or whatnot, it's still delivered in a conversational way across digital platforms. And I think that's something that's unique now, at least. That might change, but I feel like the more conversational you are, the more that a host feels like the friend of the viewer, the person that viewer might see themselves in, then I think it has a better chance of sort of resonating with different viewers and different communities. Considering this is in a way it's a personal experience. So this clip. I've used this before, and it's a bit older, but I love this clip from one of my favorite shows, The Art Assignment, and one of my favorite people, Sarah Green. I won't set this up too much because it'll explain itself, but basically she's being incredibly conversational, and she's basically explaining, something from her previous episode. So please roll it.
A few weeks ago, we got a question from Trey Willetto, who asked how we respond to people who say, I could have done that. It's so simple about art. For example, Felix Gonzalez Torres. John and I answered that A, you probably actually couldn't do it, and B, you didn't do it. But some of you, like Becky, were dissatisfied. She said, doesn't that imply that the artist has no merit outside of some guy thought about doing this first and now we care about it? It just seems like a really lazy answer. Challenge accepted, Becky. I'll give you a less lazy answer. Okay, if you're looking at a work of art and feel compelled to say, I could do that, or my kid could do that, the first thing you want to do is assess if you really could do that. Take some hard-edge abstraction like this painting by Piet Mondrian.
So I didn't mean to cut it off. If you want to see more, please go to the video. I need your view. I love that example because A, she's conversational, B, she's referencing another episode, and C, she's incorporating someone's comment into that cold open. And it really just hits on so many different points for me. Plus, I just like her. I love her delivery there. The algorithm, whatever the hell that means, right? I know it changed. I know it's like it's the black box. We don't always know what makes our content popular on different platforms. One of the things that happens during the upload of a video is it takes time to process it. Sure, of course, it's looking for indecency. It's looking for things that may not be appropriate for that platform, but it's also analyzing the platform. It's analyzing, it's analyzing that video, and it's also analyzing all of the other content and metadata that's associated with that video. It's assessing that video. It's assessing overall. It's trying to give. It's assessing a score. How likely that this video and this content is going to be to keep a person on platform. How likely it's going to be to keep a viewer going to the next video? How likely is it that they can feel more comfortable about surfacing your video to other viewers that may not be in your channel or in another, or even if you're on Facebook in a feed of somebody that normally doesn't feature you, even though you're their friend, right? So when you're creating the video content, it's important, of course, make it audience first, make it a good video, but you've also got to think about the other content that goes along with that. And that really, there's metadata all over the place, but when we say content, I'm talking about not just the video content, but the title, the thumbnail, the video and closed captioning and description. All of this meshes together and the AI of the platform is able to analyze your video, take it apart from its audio, take it apart from its video cells, to see if those video cells and that audio matches up the look and feel of your thumbnail. And plus it's also analyzing, is this thumbnail representative of the video, but also, is it a good thumbnail? Is it the kind of colors that people respond to? Is it, the AI is going to be able to recognize different faces or different objects that are in the thumbnail. So it's going to know if your video is about cars, your thumbnail may want to have something about cars in it, and it's scoring it there. The video and the closed captioning is important as well, because the closed captioning is then turned into SEO too. And the description, making sure that the description is good for SEO, but also making sure that the description lines up with your video, making it all one cohesive sort of thing, just sort of like the flow of things, right? And title and thumbnail should tell a story together. So the accuracy of, pick a title that is an accurate description of the video's content, and the platform will know. Trust me, it's going to know if that title is an accurate description of your video. Optimization, use recognizable and frequently searched keywords at the start of a title. Branding, include obviously consistent branding, such as episode numbers and that sort of thing. But that's really on how you think your show should be represented. And then get to the point, stay between 65 and 75 characters. And here's the deal. When it comes to thumbnails and when it comes to titles, that stuff can be changed later on too. The video can't be changed, the file can't be changed, but you can adapt the title and the thumbnail and the description years later. For instance, there was, forgive me, I don't remember the exact timeline here, but there was a bunch of volcanoes that erupted like a year ago, I think. I don't remember where they were, but they were somewhere on the planet. And we've had a couple of videos about volcano eruptions and the science behind that. We went back in, we changed the thumbnails, we changed the titles, and we changed the descriptions, not completely separate from what we had originally done, but we just added a few key terms in there that we knew people had been searching for the last couple of days because of the recent volcanic explosions. And we changed a few things around to make it a bit more modern. Boom, it went nuts. Not only did the algorithm recognize that we were fiddling with the content, but also it became highly shareable. The content became highly viewed, and it spiked within a week. I think one of the videos from our show, Physics Girl, went up a couple of 100,000 views. It was kind of nuts. Serving audiences during COVID-19. During this strange time, PBS has continued to adjust its strategy to serve the American public and member stations. That's kind of our responsibility, obviously, is to modify our programming to represent what's happening in the world. But conventional production with PBS and other places, obviously, I'm sure there are producers on the webinar now. Conventional production has slowed down due to social isolation, other things. But many of our digital productions have been able to remain operational really because of a lot of what I have just now covered when it comes to being flexible, when it comes to already being able to respond to audience behavior quickly, when it comes to being able to have a conversation with audiences, bring some calm to things. Some of our shows, we've got a handful of science shows, we've got a handful of DIY shows, we've got a handful of other sorts of content that all relate to PBS, and we've been able to do COVID-19 related content within these individual series, but that still relates to their communities and relates to their themes. So for instance, It's Okay to Be Smart, which is all about biology and science. They were able to publish a video about flattening the curve. Another one of my favorite shows is 2 Cents. It's a personal finance show. They've done episodes about the economy and about how you should spend your stimulus check. So it's all about doing it in that tone and in that voice, and obviously still connecting to what PBS is, but the ability of these different hosts and these different digital natives, I hate to use that term because it makes me sound like I'm not, and I'm old, but also they don't necessarily need the green screen studio that we set up. They don't necessarily need to be in the field on location. The research and the rigor of the information still remains. It's just being presented differently. And considering we were already on that verge of conversational and vloggy style, audiences are more accepting of the look and feel of the format, considering they've already built a rapport with these different hosts and with these different channels. It is because we are already so digitally, that's our mentality, that we've been able to have very nimble workflows. I mean, our infrastructure that we use the most is cloud-based technology to transfer files from between editors, to transfer files between host editors, to transfer notes between us and our different producers. It's all remote, cloud-based. We definitely remain community focused. We don't want to create alarm during this time. We want to give accurate information, and we are following the response that whenever we publish something, be it a video or be it a social media promotion or whatever it is, a comment, we're definitely monitoring the response to see, okay, are we giving this right? Are we still adhering to our community and what they expect from us? We definitely are relying more on host for engagement, not only on that platform, but also on other social media platforms that they may appear on. We're definitely relying on them to help out, to keep audiences, let's say, hot or warm, because maybe we couldn't publish a video this week because of social distancing or whatever. We're utilizing hosts on other platforms to keep audience, to remind them that we are around and that more videos will be coming soon, or even just to if we couldn't publish a video, they may just do some sort of something on Twitter or whatever live, sort of giving the same details that would have been in that episode. We're partnering with other influencers, so we are collaborating with other influencers as much as possible to cross-pollinate audiences still during this time. And again, audiences are rather forgiving during this time, as long as you are remaining authentic and you are serving them with content that they probably want right now. So that is the presentation. I think now we can do questions. I feel like I was on time. I feel like I did pretty well on time.
Yeah, no, you did phenomenally. Thank you so much, Brandon. And I mean, one thing I definitely am excited about is just all of the takeaways that you put into this presentation. I definitely will be combing back through the slides and taking notes. I mean, as a production company, we are in constant development mode, trying to come up with ideas for shows and working with media outlets like yourself. So it's awesome to hear how you guys approach it and some of the techniques and insights that you have to making great content. And I guess I'll just kick it off with the first question. I feel like a lot of the content that I see on YouTube that's successful is host driven. And you had mentioned that a lot of your content at PBS is host driven. And I'm just curious, like on a platform like YouTube that's so big, do you feel like you almost need to have a host to be successful if you're trying to make entertainment type content?
I do. And I'm going to sound hypocritical when I answer this, because it kind of depends. And again, this makes me sound kind of weird, but it kind of depends on your goals on that platform. Like, for instance, Frontline, which is one of the most amazing PBS, let's say, brands. They put their episodes, their full-length feature, documentaries and such onto YouTube, and they have amazing engagement and amazing views. And so they're just putting it straight from broadcast onto YouTube. But when it comes to making like a traditional, let's say, YouTube show, I do think you need a host. I really, really do. I think that is part of that universe. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only way to be successful. I'm really not. But it is something that those audiences are more used to, and it's just about doing it in a way that's going to be good for you, and for the audience and for that host. It's sometimes hard to have a host who is used to, doing content in their way for their audiences, on their own production schedule with their own workflow. That's what makes the content so good and so unique. And then sometimes when they partner up with a network like us, who have other, other priorities and who need to whittle in X, Y, and Z because of educational purposes or because of grant stipulations or whatever it is, it can get a little hard sometimes for that host who's been used to being on their own for so long to sort of adapt to. But that's sort of the risk that you take. But I do think an easier strategy to build audiences on YouTube would be to use a host. I'm not saying that's the only way to go though.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump into one of the questions here from the Q&A at the bottom of Zoom that Andrew was just talking about. It came about halfway through the presentation from Kevin, and he was asking, when researching communities, do you interview community members? And I think, just as an additional layer to that, how are you kind of going out there and analyzing and figuring out what your audience is and what they might want?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And PBS, in many ways, takes that super seriously. It depends for us on the digital side. It depends on the show. It depends on our goals. We started a show recently with KLRU in Austin PBS called Say It Loud, it's a great show. It's about Black history, Black culture. It's a show that needed to happen. It was a show that is funny. It is a show that is dealing with some heavy subject matter. And we knew that we didn't want that show just to become a new YouTube channel. We wanted to actually be effective. We wanted to be representational of the community. So we held a few different, with the help of Austin PBS, we held a few different, like, let's say, panels and a few different community events to play the episodes, to make sure that we were on point, and to make sure that even during the development process, we were reaching out to different communities like Black Culture Connection, other communities, to make sure that in developing the show, we were hitting on topics that were relevant and weren't cheesy and were actually going to be not redundant. Also, PBS takes great care to do, and we participated a few times in this as well, different focus groups and focus panels. Obviously, you've got focus groups whenever you've got the new season of Downton Abbey or whatever to look at, but we use focus groups a lot before we may publish a large mini series on digital that, it may be a kids oriented program or another show that may be sort of out of our wheelhouse. We'll create a focus group derived from specific communities that are a part of the PBS universe to make sure that we're accurately doing that content. So it varies, but we do try and interview and talk to as many community members during the production, and then during at least the first few episodes after we launch it to make sure that we're on point, and then we'll check in every now and again.
Great. And I'm also going to take this next question from the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom. It comes from Andrew. It said, on YouTube, are you seeing growth in viewership on TV devices as opposed to desktop or mobile? And is that changing any of your strategy or content? And I will relay one kind of anecdotal factoid along this. I know when Quibi launched about 7 weeks back, one of the biggest complaints was that you couldn't, have it on your television, that you could only watch it on your phone. Saw a lot of coverage in the media about that. So I thought this question from Andrew jumped out at me.
No, it's great. It's great. And I mean, like when I'm at home, I might be watching YouTube on my phone, but I'm definitely going to display it on my Apple TV or on a bigger device. But we see the biggest growth area when it comes to YouTube viewership specifically is in desktop and mobile. I don't know for sure if it's being projected from a phone or a desktop onto a television set, let's say on a traditional television set, but we see our most viewership increase on desktop, and recently, the last year or so, it's been on mobile devices.
Cool. And, I brought up Quibi, and I believe, I don't know the exact dates. I know HBO Max is launching relatively soon.
Today, right?
Today, yeah. So today, and you have Apple TV, you have Peacock is launching soon, or it already has launched from NBC. So there's a lot of new entrants there, a lot more so than there was for years and years now. What we're going a little off topic here, but what are your thoughts on the streaming wars?
Look, I mean, I think it's harder and harder I think it was disparate before. I think it was, it was several different things that we as audiences could select to view. I think now, obviously with the streaming wars, and everything is sort of going back to the way it used to be in a way. It's like we got away from being 3 or 4 massive, or 5 massive networks or whatever it is, and then it became super disparate for years. And now I feel like it's going back to conglomerates. I feel like obviously, Disney and Fox have obviously joined together, for Disney Plus, and that's only going to get bigger and vacuum up more stuff. And now with Peacock, NBC Universal, that is now several different things merged back together. I think that we're going to have a return in a way to the way it was before when it comes to content being aggregated together and only coming from a few specific sources. And for PBS, it kind of sucks because a lot of our content on the broadcast side is coming from, we can't necessarily afford right now because these streamers are paying such big prices, like Netflix or whoever it may be, Apple TV or Apple Plus, whoever it is. It's harder for us to compete from a dollar perspective because we're public media. We don't always have the money to compete with those who may be just vacuuming up content right now. So yeah, that's kind of my thought on that. On the good side, on us, on the digital side, our content is original, so we're still sort of doing our thing. But on the broadcast side, it's definitely we definitely feel a little bit.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that. I mean, one of the questions that I just saw in the Q&A, to pivot a little bit, another great one from Andrew that I think is super pertinent, and a question that we're always asking is, do you find that there's any benefit to regularity, to creating appointment viewing, so releasing at a specific, consistent day and time? Or do you think that doesn't really matter at the end of the day?
No, I do. I think frequency on a platform, if we're talking about YouTube or even Facebook Watch, or hell, even our OTT play, I think that there is a lot of value in frequency. I think that when you get off frequency, when you get off a publishing schedule, you should let people know. You should, be it if you're on YouTube in the community tab section, if you're on Facebook, if it's the first comment, whatever it might be, I think that you need to let them know, hey, look, we're going to be pausing for a while, because there's already just so much content, and there's already so much out there. And it's not like a regular primetime schedule block, daytime schedule block, kids day block. It is all over the board. So the more that you can help organize your audience and get them organized as when to expect the next video, the better. And plus, the platform realizes that you're doing that too. The frequency part.
Cool. I want to talk about measurement a bit, and I'm curious what tools, what software you use for that. How do you measure success, especially if you're starting out a new show? What are some of the metrics that you're looking at, and what software are you using to analyze that?
So it depends on the platform. So I'll just talk about YouTube because it's got what I think is the most robust set of in-platform tools. So you're bowing down obviously to what YouTube finds important when it comes to metrics. Obviously, like I said, you're also got to get what you need as far as your organization is concerned, and then you've got the whole money part to deal with too. And I think when it comes to in-platform metrics, when it comes to like YouTube dashboard, it's always important to be looking at, like I was saying, retention rates really, really important. Where your subscribers are coming from is important. How they're viewing, how your views are being how your videos are being watched is really, really important. And from a competitive analysis, and I'll say that we use, so when it comes to other YouTube videos, like if I'm looking at, I don't know, Eater or Vox or Viacom Digital Studios, we use a software called vidIQ. I don't know how many people may be familiar with that, but it allows you to sort of do a 30,000-foot kind of deep dive into what other YouTube videos are doing, or to what other channels are doing as far as tagging, as far as their optimization is concerned, as far as what they're using for, I don't know, any other SEO stuff. And vidIQ gives videos a score of how it's doing when it comes to the title. Is it too long, or whatever it might be, so that you can sort of see what other like-minded or competition is doing, so that you can sort of do something different, or you can steal from them and maybe use, similar tags as to what they're doing. I think, it depends on the platform again, but like internally, we've got our own CMS system. We've got our own internal metrics that we find that we look for success. One thing that PBS uses, because so much of our content is windowed onto different platforms, we're using an average minute watched stat metric across all content. So if one of our shows that's on broadcast is also appearing on OTT, it's also simulcasting onto Facebook or onto YouTube or wherever it's going, we're going to use a data point that's the average minute watched across all the different platforms with unique users. So it kind of depends on the platform, and it depends on what we're trying to prove from the metrics.
Definitely. Yeah, to have that data has to be an enormous help in kind of curating your content, making sure it's headed in the right direction and it's reaching the people that you want it to reach. So I think that is all the time that we have for the webinar today. To everyone who joined us, thank you guys for popping in. We hope you had fun. Hope you learned a couple things along the way. I know that our team always leaves with ideas, and we hope that these presentations did the same for all of you. And finally, an enormous thank you to Brandon for sharing his time and his insights with us. Thank you so much, Brandon.
You got it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And once again, we have a number of webinars coming up, so keep an eye out. Next week, we'll have Carter Hansen, the VP of Content Programming at VidCon, and Gregory Litley, VP of Social Strategy and Content at Elite Model World, who will be talking about virtual events and viral activations on trending platforms like TikTok. So thanks, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.